Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about family adventures in Alaska with Royal Caribbean. My name is Laura Schwerzler, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker and Alaska Cruise Tour expert, Brendan Halcomb. Welcome, Brendan.
Hey, Laura, it's so good to be here today and to have the opportunity to speak to the clients of CruiseWeb. I think it's going to be an exciting 45 minutes talking about Alaska.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. So we look forward to hearing more from you shortly. But before we dive into cruise tours, I'd like to tell everyone a bit about how we at Royal Caribbean craft the perfect family vacation. So, Brendan, as you know, in Alaska, there's so much to discover, both in port and on board. So the beauty and majesty of Alaska really needs to be seen to be believed. There's so many unique experiences unlike anywhere else in the world. So you can see here on our slide a few of the most popular shore excursions. Panning for gold in Skagway, Alaska, the old 1800s gold rush town. Dog sledding in the capital of Juneau, and lots of whale watching and rail experiences. So it's no secret that people visit Alaska for the scenery, and our cruises offer plenty of opportunity to explore. So whether it's walking on a glacier or passing by the Hubbard Glacier on your own personal balcony, it's truly a breathtaking experience. So America's final frontier is filled with wildlife and the chance to see animals in their natural habitat. You can expect to see caribou, 4 different types of whales, black bears, and bald eagles. So in 2021, we have 4 ships that visit Alaska. The Quantum of the Seas and the Ovation of the Seas will both depart round trip out of Seattle for a 7-night glacier experience. We also have the Radiance of the Seas. Brendan's going to tell us a little bit more about the cruise tours. That's our 7-night northbound and southbound glacier experience in combination with the interior of Alaska. Finally, we have the Serenade of the Seas, round trip from Vancouver. That's a 7-night glacier experience as well, and a 13-night Canadian Rockies cruise tour. So Quantum of the Seas and Ovation of the Seas, these really are the perfect cold weather ship. So many indoor areas to enjoy. Right here you can see our North Star. This is a complimentary experience on board that takes you 250 feet up into the air. It's actually a pod with 14 people for breathtaking sweeping views in Alaska. So our Quantum class, you can see here the Quantum of the Seas and Ovation of the Seas are what we call sister ships. They're identical in layout and features. So they both depart from Seattle, cruising through up to Ketchikan, icy Strait Points, the capital of Alaska, Juneau, cruising back down to see all of those beautiful glaciers, Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier, into Victoria, and finally back into Seattle. So I'm going to let Brendan tell you a little bit more about some of these exciting ports here in just a minute. So as I mentioned before, our Quantum class is the perfect cold weather ship. You can see here some of the indoor areas are Seaplex. This is a multifunctional family venue. First bumper cars at sea, roller skating, all kinds of experiences to enjoy on board during the day when you're at sea. Our Solarium indoor adults only pool area. We have a bionic robotic bar and the Flow Rider Surf Simulator. Can you imagine surfing in Alaska? In the back here, you have our Ripcord by iFly. That is a simulated skydiving experience, fully complimentary on board. So our North Star, I showed you this before. This is our experience on board that takes you 250 feet up into the air. Now, it is mostly complimentary with the exception of a few specific hours and locations. You can reserve on board this experience for $69 per person Well worth the 20-minute flight. It takes you up there. You have hot chocolate, a chance to spend time with your family, and really take in those sweeping views. So some of the accommodations available on the Quantum of the Seas and Ovation of the Seas. This is a really unique one, our interior virtual balcony. This is an interior stateroom with a high-definition 80-inch screen that has a live feed of what is going on outside of the ship. So if you're passing a glacier, you get the live action and have an opportunity to see that. It even has sound that you can turn on and off. You can either pull the curtain and pretend like it's a regular balcony, which I like to do when I'm on board, or just turn off the screen if you'd like a little break. We have our ocean view with balcony, and then the lap of luxury, our grand loft suite. What a way to experience Alaska as you're passing by these majestic coastlines. So talk to your CruiseWeb consultant about the accommodations on board and what might fit you and your family. All right, so switching gears here, we also have our Serenade of the Seas, doing a round-trip 7-night experience. This is a little different. It's home-ported in Vancouver, British Columbia. You can see the itinerary here from Vancouver. You'll cruise through the Inside Passage. One difference between this itinerary and the Quantum and Ovation is that it does go into the port of Sitka, onto Juneau, the capital, Skagway, our gold rush town, and then down through the beautiful fjords of Tracy Arm. So our Serenade of the Seas and our Radiance of the Seas are what we call sister ships. Again, very similar in layout and amenities. So while our Serenade does the round trip from Vancouver 7 nights, our Radiance of the Seas will do the Alaska Cruise Tour 7 nights. So Brendan will tell you about that here just in a second. But some of the activities on board that you can enjoy for families, we have our putt-putt golf, rock climbing wall. We also offer an indoor solarium pool, Broadway-style shows, and lots of different specialty restaurants and dining to enjoy while you're on board. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Brendan to tell us a little bit more about our Alaska Cruise Tour experience.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. That was fabulous. Yeah, it's let's get into cruise tours a little bit. And let's see here.
Here, let me take this back from you, Brendan. I'm just going to go ahead and give you the control for our keyboard and mouse.
Okay, that's great.
Gotta love the live presentations, folks.
Yes. How about you just move the slides along, Laura? Because I don't.
Sure.
You have the presentation on your screen, okay? All right, good stuff. Well, as Laura mentioned, I spent some years working with Alaska. I spent 11 years working on board cruise ships. If I take all the contracts that I spent in Alaska, and the contract is just the 6 months or so that we were working on board our cruise ships at any given time, I would have spent about 4 solid years just cruising the southwestern coastline of Alaska. And I loved it. Every single time, every single contract, Alaska was a destination myself and my colleagues were always excited to return to. Left-hand side of the screen there, that's a young, impressionable me in 2003 on my first cruise to Alaska with a pretty girl on my arm. She's downstairs with a baby now, so that worked out well. And then just on the right is my most recent trip to Alaska last year for our last year. The last 5 years, I've been working with the interior of Alaska to create our cruise tours, and it's an experience that I sincerely believe that if you make the leap to want to experience both the coastline and the interior of Alaska, you will have fabulous, fabulous experiences. Let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk a little bit about some of the expectations and what you can think of as how do you have the experiences that you want when you go to Alaska. So, of course, you're listening today because you want to go to Alaska. You want to explore Alaska. You want to have certain experiences in Alaska. And a great place to start is just to recognize the vast size of the destination that you want to visit. I know intellectually, we all know that Alaska is the largest U.S. state. But when you frame it within the confines of the lower 48, let's jump across one slide, Laura, you begin to see how big it really is. When you frame it that way, you can see that if you were to split Alaska in two, those two pieces would be the first and second largest U.S. state, with Texas coming in third. There's more coastline in Alaska than the East Coast, the West Coast, the Gold Coast combined. And in many cases, those destinations, those ports along the coastline are a series of interconnected islands. They're landlocked. So how do you see the things that you want to see? How do you do the things that you want to do with a state this vast and a coastline this extensive? Well, in my estimation, from my experiences over the years, the best way to do that is to experience Alaska on a cruise and escorted land tour to be able to have those experiences. Let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk a little bit about just the cruise of Alaska. Now, this is the full expanse of Alaska here. You can see that southeastern coastline that Laura was talking about, and then up into the interior of Alaska, you can see where it says Kenai Fjords National Park. As you go north from there, you have all of the interior of Alaska and the fabulous destinations like Anchorage and Alyeska and Talkeetna, and of course, Denali National Park and Fairbanks. But I want to talk a little bit about the cruise. So let's progress just one slide, Laura, because I want to highlight that southeastern coastline of Alaska. This is where you're going to be experiencing your cruise to Alaska. You absolutely do not want to miss a cruise to Alaska, because the opportunities and experiences that you have in the ports along the way are truly, truly exceptional. In Juneau, one of your core ports, fabulous opportunities for whale watching. And in fact, as the whales migrate down from Hawaii through the Pacific to the feeding grounds of Alaska in spring, it's just so rare not to have fabulous, one-of-a-kind whale watching experiences in Juneau. And if you get lucky, particularly you have the opportunity to see bubble net feeding. Take an opportunity to look that up. When pods of humpback whales are using their blowholes in order to catch fish for the feeding. Truly a uniquely Alaskan experience. Let's jump across one slide and talk about Ketchikan. Let's talk about Skagway. Because as you go to Skagway, it blends for me two of the amazing things that Alaska delivers day by day on each destination that you go to. Alaska is abundant in two things: incredible history and fabulous scenery. And the Yukon and White Pass Rail that follows the route that the miners took in the late 1800s to access the Yukon goldfields has that incredible history. But it also has the incredible scenery as it follows the peaks and the valleys as you're traveling on that route. It's super beautiful, and it's also the highest rated narrow gauge rail experience in the world. It's really, really exceptional. Let's jump across one slide and talk about Ketchikan, because something that we all want to experience in Alaska is wilderness. And one of the great wilderness experiences that you can have along the southeastern coastline of Alaska is flying amongst the misty fjords, the 1,000-foot misty cliffs that are surrounded by the Tongass National Forest. Everybody should take an opportunity to see Alaska from up top. It is a breathtaking experience. And flying amongst the misty fjords is one of the most fabulous experiences that you can have on the southeastern coastline. But I think what is also important to recognize is this. Let's jump across one slide, Laura, because all of the experiences that we've been talking about today, they require a little bit more money. And I think one of the expectations that folks have when they go to Alaska is that it's going to be an expensive experience for shore excursions along the southeastern coastline. There are certainly experiences that cost a little more. Anytime that you're going in a float plane or a helicopter, it's going to be a higher dollar experience. But even though I said you have to see Alaska from up top, doesn't mean that you need to be in a helicopter or a plane to see Alaska from up top. Plenty of opportunities in order to see Alaska from up top just by going to the top of a mountain. And there's plenty of opportunities along the southeastern coastline to just do things for you that day, not necessarily a shore excursion, but something just for you that costs little to no money. This is an example of one of them. As you go to Juneau, one of the things that I'd love to do was, instead of taking the cable car to the top of Mount Juneau, was to walk around the back. And there was a beautiful hiking trail called the Resurrection Bay Hiking Trail, which takes you as part of about an hour and a quarter hike up to the top of the mountain. And just before you get to the top, the foliage opens out, and you can see, as you can see here, right to the end of the Gastineau Channel. And it is breathtaking, and it is amazing, and it is free. And you can really blend up the experiences that you choose day by day to have those amazing one-of-a-kind of experiences that is something different the next day and then something different the day after that. To have a uniquely Alaskan experience that is tailored for what you want to experience when you go to Alaska. All right, let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk a little bit about the scenic areas of cruising along the southeastern coastline of Alaska. Now, specifically today, what I'm going to talk about is Hubbard Glacier. And the reason that I'm talking about Hubbard Glacier is because the scenic area of cruising we have on our northbound, southbound cruises on the Radiant, and I'll talk about why that's important in a second, do visit Hubbard Glacier. But the destinations that you've probably heard of over the years will be something like Glacier Bay or Endicott Arms, Hubbard Glacier, Troisième Fjord. These are all glacial scenic areas of cruising. Now, some you may have heard about more than others. Some have been visited more than others over the years. I think what's true about it for me, as someone who was just lucky enough to have the opportunity to visit all of them over the years, is that they're all fabulously beautiful, but in their own individual and unique ways. The personality of Hubbard Glacier is that she's the most dramatic of all the glacial scenic areas of cruising. And that's because whereas many other glacial areas are receding, Hubbard Glacier is advancing to the tune of around 30 meters per day. And what that creates is the calving. This is when the cliffs of ice collapse from the glacier into the ocean, and it's dramatic and it's spectacular, and you get more of it at Hubbard Glacier. And that's why the native Alaskans called it White Thunder, because it's this dramatic experience. And where you're sitting right now on the ship, the captain is spinning the ship in Disenchantment Bay to everyone to have fabulous views of Hubbard Glacier while a national park ranger narrates the experience. It is an awesome day. But so is Endicott Arms. And so is Troisième Fjord and Glacier Bay. And I think for me, if you've never been to Alaska before, it honestly doesn't matter what glacial scenic area of cruising is included as part of your itinerary, because you will be blown away by any of them. All right, let's jump across one slide and let's talk a little bit about how the cruise blends with the land tour. Now, this is the southeastern coastline of Alaska. This is the itinerary that we've just explored. The only destination that we didn't talk about, which was Icy Strait. Fabulous opportunity to spend some time in the largest native Alaskan community on the southeastern coastline of Alaska. As you're traveling that coastline, you're going to get north to Seward. Now, as Laura mentioned, we have 4 ships on the southeastern coastline of Alaska: Seattle round trip, Vancouver round trip, northbound, southbound. Why is northbound, southbound important? It's important because in order to have the opportunity to explore the interior of Alaska, you have to either embark or debark your cruise ship in Seward, Alaska. That's the most northerly point that you're seeing there. All of our other ships, the Quantum, Quantum and Serenade, and remind me, Laura, what's the third one there? I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, and no, that's all right. And the Ovation of the Seas.
Quantum Serenade Ovation. Thank you, Laura.
Of course.
Quantum Serenade Ovation, they do not dock in Seward. They go north roughly to about Hubbard Glacier, and then they turn around again and come back to either Seattle or Vancouver. So the only way that you can have the opportunity in order to explore the interior of Alaska is by traveling on board Radiance of the Seas, because it embarks or debarks in Seward. When you do that, you have the opportunity to then go north. And when you go north, you can go to destinations like Alaskan, which is surrounded by the Chugach mountain range and the 7 hanging glaciers. You'll never see mountainous regions like this. It's really, really beautiful. Anchorage is the most populous city in the interior of Alaska, but it has more moose within its city limits than people. Fabulous dining scene, great local craft breweries, great access to the wilderness. As you travel north, you'll go to Talkeetna, a fabulous town of roughly 800 folks or so, and nothing is beyond this town. The road ends, and nothing is beyond it except Denali, the mountain, the tallest peak in North America. It is a really great town. As you go north, you have the opportunity to go to Denali National Park with its 6 million acres of pristine and wild and wonderful land. And in Fairbanks, it is the land of the midnight sun. It is the land of the gold rush. It is the land of the aurora borealis. All of this is many hours north of Seward. If you were to drive directly from Seward to go to Denali National Park, it would be a 9-hour drive. So the only way to really explore this destinations is to do it as part of a multi-night land tour. And that's what a cruise tour is. It's a combination of two things: a 7-night northbound, southbound cruise on the Radiance that's combined with a 2 to 6 night Royal Caribbean land tour into the interior of Alaska to create your cruise tour, which ultimately, when you combine those two components, is 9 to 13 nights, exploring Alaska by both land and exploring Alaska by sea. Now, you always have the opportunity to do one of two things. Either you can fly into Vancouver and do that 7-night northbound sailing that would take you up to Seward, where you do that 2 to 6 night land tour into the interior of Alaska and then flying home from Anchorage or Fairbanks. Or alternately, you could fly into Anchorage or Fairbanks, do the 2 to 6 night land tour that would take you down to Seward, and then join the Radiance for your 7-night sailing that would take you down to Vancouver, where you'd fly home from there. You can do your cruise tour as part of a northbound or a southbound itinerary. Either way, it is a fabulous, fabulous experience. So let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk a little bit about why. I think this is a really important question because it underlies the fundamentals of why do you want to go to Alaska. These are great questions to ask. These are great questions to ask your CruiseWeb professional. Why, right? What is it that you want to see? What are the experiences that you want to have? Because by asking that question, it will really illuminate for you what the experience is going to be better for you when you're going to Alaska, because it does require more time and it does require more money to do a cruise tour. So why? And really the why of cruise tour is about elevated experiences. It's not that the southeastern coastline of Alaska cruise only is not amazing. It is. A cruise to Alaska will be something that you will always, always remember. But a cruise tour elevates each of those experiences that you have along the coastline. Wilderness opportunities on the coastline are abundant. I talked about the Misty Fjords as one of them. But the opportunity to experience wilderness day in, day out, the opportunity to be standing in nature, in national parks, surrounded by nothing but wilderness and animals, that opportunity is elevated as part of a cruise tour. That opportunity is elevated as part of going into the interior of Alaska over just the coastline. When you think about wildlife, the opportunities for wildlife along the coastline are abundant, and Laura said it so beautifully. The opportunity for whales and sea lions and orcas, bald eagles, all of this, typically marine-orientated wildlife is on the coastline. But If you want the opportunity to experience the Alaskan Big Five, as we call them, the moose, the caribou, the grizzlies, the bell sheep, and the wolves, the opportunity for that is predominantly going to be in Denali National Park, with its 6 million acres of pristine and wild and wonderful land. And to go to Denali National Park, you have to do a land tour. Your wildlife experiences will be elevated as part of a cruise tour over just the Alaska cruise. And when you think about mountains and mountain ranges, if you've ever stood surrounded by the Kenai mountain range on the coastline of Alaska, the Cascades as part of glacial formations down into the Pacific, you will know that there are beautiful mountains on the coastline. But the one mountain that we think of is Denali, formerly Mount McKinley, the tallest peak in North America. And that is over 377 miles from a port destination in Alaska. To experience that, to really experience it, or the opportunity to do so, you have to do a land tour. Your mountainous experiences will be elevated as part of a cruise tour over just the Alaska cruise. Now, those glaciers you get as part of any cruise, only a cruise tour. But 3 out of the 4 experiences that really drive most folks, and you have to ask yourself the question for you, but most folks, what is it they want to experience in Alaska? It will be elevated as part of a cruise tour over just the Alaska cruise. All right, let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk a little bit about what is included in the land component of the cruise tour. And conveniently, what is included in the land component of the cruise tour is also what elevates a Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise tour above the industry standard. We're so proud of this. Lodges, service, and transportation. Let's talk a little bit about this. Jump across one slide, Laura, because I want to talk about lodges and really articulate what you'll be experiencing for lodges on the land component of your cruise tour. It's really one word to focus on, which is experience. We want you to go, we want you to come with us, we want you to take you to the destinations in Alaska that will provide the best experience. That is our focus. Where is the best place to be? And then we are going to select the finest available lodge in that destination. So, for example, we think that Alaska is an incredible destination because it's incredibly beautiful. I talked a little bit about the Chugach mountain range and the 7 Hanging Glacier. Well, we want to go to Alaska. The finest available lodge in Alaska is actually the finest lodge in all of Alaska. It's called Hotel Alaska, an incredible luxury resort. Take an opportunity to look it up. 4 diamond-style restaurants that sit at the top of mountains and heated saltwater swimming pools that look out over lush valleys. It's really, really beautiful. Talkeetna is another incredible destination. And because we want to go to Talkeetna, we stay at Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge, which is certainly the finest property in that destination. We would probably rate it as the 2nd finest property in the interior of Alaska as well. It's a great property, but look at those views, top right-hand side, that you get from the back of Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge. That's actually the Alaska Range. Center point there is Denali, tallest peak in North America. Remember, I mentioned that Talkeetna is the town at the end of the road. Nothing is beyond it except for Denali. And we love this property just because it's a great property. It's got great views, but also it's the only property in the interior of Alaska that has both those great views and ease of access to the town of Talkeetna itself. It's just 5 minutes away. So it's a really fabulous property in order to combine both beautiful views and great local experiences. Bottom left-hand side is Denali Park Village, just 12-minute complimentary transfer away from the gates of Denali National Park. Nobody, or most people, cannot stay inside Denali National Park. Certainly not cruise lines. The development inside Denali National Park was prohibited in the 70s. So there's mostly older lodges that are inside the park itself, and very, very few of them. Most accommodations are on the outskirts of Denali National Park. And Denali Park Village is just a 12-minute transfer away, as I mentioned, from the gates of it. It sits literally right on the Nenana, as it's called, river. The Nenana River is the main river that flows through Denali. Fire pits on the outside, surrounded by the Alaskan mountain range. It's a fabulous property to have that national park experience. All very different properties. Denali Park Village does not come to the level of luxury of Alyeska because all of the developments around Denali are national park style accommodations, but all of the finest available property in those destinations themselves. The key, the focus for us is the destination. Then we select the finest available property in that destination. Let's jump across one slide, Laura, and talk a little bit about a fully escorted experience because it is so important. Remember when I said that Alaska is the largest U.S. state by some distance? So you have to imagine you're traveling quite a bit on the interior of Alaska in order to explore some of those fabulous rail belt destinations. Well, how do you ensure that you're having the experiences that you want to have? How do you know that you're getting great local recommendations to the restaurant that's serving the freshest halibut at the beginning of the season? How do you know that someone is going to pair your wants and needs with the experiences that are available to you? You do that by being a fully escorted experience. That is key for us at Royal Caribbean. Everything that we offer in the interior of Alaska is a fully escorted experience with a local tour adventure specialist. We call them, local tour guide. We call them adventure specialists. That means someone who comes from Alaska or lives in Alaska but has that deep connection with Alaska. When you fly into the interior of Alaska, you're met by one person, your dedicated local tour guide. And they will introduce you to your dedicated motor coach driver. You've got two persons who are servicing your dedicated deluxe motor coach. And that is it for the duration. It really creates a seamless journey as you're traveling through the interior of Alaska, which we think is so important. Let's jump across one side, Laura, because in addition to those deluxe motor coaches that I mentioned that are dedicated, every single cruise tour that we offer includes a journey on board the Wilderness Express Rail. In the interior of Alaska, there is one rail line that stretches from Seward, remember that destination where you embark and debark on the ship, right the way north to Fairbanks. All of this is owned by an organization called the ARR, the Alaska Railroad. It's a state-owned organization. Their engines pull many different types of rail carriages. Some are better than others. Some are owned by the Alaska Railroad, some privately owned. The Wilderness Express are the best of the lot. Different levels of quality, the Wilderness Express are the best of the lot. 80 persons up top, luxury leather seating, wide, well-apportioned, power ports in the seats in front of you, bar service available of the seats. Obviously, those beautiful domed roofs with the incredible scenery that surrounds you in Alaska. You're not seeing it on this picture, but down below, white linen silver service, freshly prepared meals available for purchase on your rail journey. Every single cruise tour we offer has a segment, a travel segment of typically 3 to 5 hours on the Wilderness Express. Some of our cruise tours have multiple rail segments. One of our cruise tours almost exclusively travels by rail. So this is a really fabulous part of every single Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise tour that we offer, traveling for your rail journeys on board the Wilderness Express. All right, so what is included in your Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise tours? Lodges, service, transportation, but also included experiences. Think of these kind of like shore excursions that are already built into your cruise. So a lot of great included experiences. Actually, one of my favorite ones there is the riverboat discovery. Again, take an opportunity to look it up at your convenience. What I love about Alaska, what I love particularly about the interior of Alaska, is that it is locals who have tremendous investment in their experience that they're offering to you, but also the history of Alaska. The riverboat discovery is run by a family called the Binkley family, who have actually been in Fairbanks since the founding of Fairbanks itself over 100 years ago. Beautiful stern-wheeler boats that take you down the Chino River, which is the main river in Fairbanks, visiting an Athabascan Indian village where they talk about their life. It's just fabulous. I was lucky enough in order to last year travel on one of their sternwheelers with the matriarch of the Binkley family, who was, I think, like 94 years old at the time. It's really, really cool. The included experiences you've probably heard of the most are the tours into Denali National Park. So let's jump across one slide, Laura, and talk a little bit about that, because there's only one road that goes into Denali National Park. It's called the Denali Park Road. So you're seeing it here that stretches from the visitor center up to Kantishna. It's 92 miles long. When you hear names like the Denali Natural History Tour or the Tundra Wilderness Tour, all that's telling you is how far down the road that you're going to go. The Denali Natural History Tour goes around 30 miles into the park, and the Tundra Wilderness Tour goes around 60 miles into the park. Every single Alaska cruise tour that we offer includes one of these tours into Denali National Park. Typically speaking, if you have the shorter Denali Natural History Tour included as part of that cruise tour, you can upgrade to the Tundra Wilderness Tour for a fee of around $75 when you get to Alaska. So everything includes a tour into Denali National Park, because this is going to be your prime opportunity in order to see the Big Five and also get some great views of Denali Mountain itself. All right, let's jump across, Laura, and talk a little bit about some of those cruise tours for 2021. As I mentioned, 9 to 13 night cruise tours. Tremendous range of cruise tours, tremendous options that are available to you. I think this is one of the challenging parts where folks really struggle with how do you select an individual cruise tour, because there are different lengths, different destinations, different included experiences. And where I really recommend to start out is just by recognizing that there aren't tremendous differences in the opportunities for the destinations in which you visit. You can see here that for our 9 and 10 night cruise tours, you have the opportunity to visit Fairbanks, Denali, Talkeetna, and Anchorage. And for our 11 night cruise tours, you have the opportunity to visit the same places, but now additionally Alaskan. And on the 12 night cruise tour, you have the opportunity to visit the same places, but now Seward as well. And it just stands to reason, right? The longer you're with us, the more places we can take you and the more things that we can do as part of that experience. And where I really recommend that you start out when considering an Alaska cruise tour, once you are set on it is an Alaska cruise tour that you want, once you are set on that you also want to explore the interior of Alaska, once you are at the point of making this decision about which cruise tour, where I recommend that you start out is just by recognizing that Alaska is not Disney World. It is the quintessentially natural destination. The bears will be there if they want to, and they won't if they won't. And the clouds will arise from Denali, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But the longer you go to Alaska for, the more opportunities that you will create for yourself for those magical, natural moments to happen. The longer that you go to Alaska for, the more opportunities you will create for yourself for those magical, natural moments. How long can you commit to having an amazing vacation experience in Alaska? If it's 10 nights, great. If it's 11 nights, perfect. If it's 12 nights, fabulous. If it's 13 nights, great. But select that length of cruise tour first, the most that you can do. Because once you select a length of cruise tour, you're down to much fewer options. We've actually only got 2 11-night cruise tours. We've only got 3 12-night cruise tours. We've only got 2 13-night cruise tours. So just by selecting the length of cruise tour, which is really your prime driver, it'll really narrow down the options for you to select from. Let's jump across one slide, Laura, because I do want to highlight a couple cruise tours. We're so proud of these. All of our cruise tours are fabulous, but we do have a couple cruise tours that are unique to Royal Caribbean cruises in the industry, actually, in the cruise tour industry. Cruise tour number 10 is called the Katmai Bear Track. Fabulous because we actually fly you to a destination called Katmai National Park. It's about a 2-hour flight south of Seward. In Katmai National Park, you will have a river called Brooks Falls, and around Brooks Falls you have elevated wooden platforms. And what happens is during the salmon spawning season, which starts around the middle of June, the bears descend on Brooks Falls in order to eat the salmon. And our guests who are standing on these elevated wooden platforms have these one-of-a-kind, amazing bear viewing experience. It's really, really cool. In fact, take an opportunity just to type into your web browser, Brooks Falls Live Cam. Select the live cam and you'll be able to see images of Brooks Falls and the bears that are hunting on the streams there. It's really, really cool. Cruise tour number 9, we have a unique cruise tour which is called the Family Tundra Express, which is a cruise tour that is designed for families. cruise tours are fabulous for families. They really are. I would always recommend to be aware of how young the youngest child will be. Typically, I would say that, younger than 8 might be a challenge for kids just because there's some longer travel segments, but obviously everybody knows their kids and the best. But it is a cruise tour that is designed for families with younger kids. We have a great s'mores evening under the starlight, which is included as part of the cruise tour. We have a fabulous included experiences which are really driven towards being kid friendly, such as the Imaginarium section of the Anchorage Museum, and the traveling segments are a little bit shorter as well. So a really cool way to experience cruise tour if you've got younger kids. All right, let's jump across one slide, Laura, because that is it. I'm going to finish it up there so I'm not talking forever, as I'm occasionally accused of doing so. I hope that's covered a lot of what and why you should be experiencing Alaska by both land and sea with Royal Caribbean. But if there are questions, Laura, I'd be happy to answer them.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Brendan. That was a beautiful overview and explanation of the Alaska Cruise Tour. It really transported me back to 2012 when I had the opportunity to do it. Just those beautiful views from the mountaintop at Hotel Alaska and seeing the Aurora Borealis in Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge, that will certainly stay with me for a lifetime. So thank you for that. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we've got some questions here. Let's see. All right. So, Brendan, do you recommend taking the tour portion of the vacation before or after the cruise?
I think the first thing to recognize is that northbound cruise tours are identical to southbound cruise tours if they're of the same number name. So, for example, we have cruise tour number 1. Whether you do that northbound or southbound, you're going to have identical experiences. I think that's the first thing to recognize. First, work with your timings and what you have available to you. So don't preclude either northbound or southbound don't preclude either northbound or southbound if you have limited time available to you. Make sure they're both an option too in your selections because they are identical. There are some preferences that some folks have. Some folks will tell you, for example, that they prefer to do the land tour before the cruise just because it's like the hustle and bustle of land touring, and then you relax on the cruise down. I certainly recognize that, but also recognize that it's just a preference thing. Other folks will tell you, and I'm probably in this camp a little bit more, is that land tour after the cruise, so going northbound is better, just because it's a little bit easier on acclimatization. So obviously, if you're going southbound, land tour first, you have to recognize that you've got a little bit of a longer flight, right? Because you've got to get to Anchorage or Fairbanks. And when you get there, there's probably going to be 20 plus hours of sunlight. And then you're into land touring the next day at about 7:30 a.m. When you fly to Vancouver, so now going northbound instead of southbound, you're flying to Vancouver, which is an easier flight. And then what is the first night of any cruise that you've ever been on? It's a sea day, right? It's a government-sanctioned nap. So you can relax on the cruise to go to Seward and then, start your land touring from there. So I kind of prefer the northbound for me, but it's small differences and it is preferences. So I think it's just kind of which side of the camp you come in on. But I think the most important thing to recognize is that if you have limited time and schedule, either northbound or southbound are going to give you amazing experiences.
Well, great. Thank you. I love that. A government-sanctioned nap, something to consider. All right. The next question, are there assigned seats on the Wilderness Express rail car?
Not assigned seats, no. I mean, basically, you'll get on the Wilderness Express, and then you'll select your seat, which will be your seat for the journey. We do encourage rotation of seating on the motor coach. Great to meet people. It's not required by any means. Everyone can sit wherever they want. We do tend to reserve the front particularly the front right-hand seat, because they have the amazing views out the front window for as kind of rotational seats for people to come up there and sit there. But there's no assigned seats either for the motor coach or for the Wilderness Express for either of them. No.
Okay, great. And I know that you had mentioned the steamboat experience, but what is your personal favorite excursion?
I mean, I love the Riverboat Discovery. I mean, if I had to choose one, I would probably choose the Kenai Fjords National Park Tour, which is specifically, it's an included experience that we have on cruise trip number 6. Because the Kenai Peninsula for me is one of the most breathtaking places on the planet. I got really lucky in 11 years of cruise ship travel that I went to some amazing places in the world. And the Kenai region, for me, just stands with a couple other places like Peru, like the Norwegian fjords, as just exceptionally beautiful destinations. It really, you can't stand in Kenai and Seward or Homer or any of these places and just not have your breath taken away. It really is that special. The Kenai Fjords National Park Tour, as I mentioned on cruise number 6, it takes you out on a boat onto the Kenai Fjords National Park, which is on water, and you have some tremendous opportunities for glaciers. You have great opportunity for wildlife, marine wildlife on the ocean. It's all narrated by a local captain. They've got great connections to the area. It's just a really special day out.
Great. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for sharing your experience. That is all the time that we have for today. But anyone on the line, if you have any additional questions, please reach out to the CruiseWeb and your CruiseWeb consultant at 1-800-377-9383, and they will be happy to help you pick the perfect Alaskan vacation with Royal Caribbean. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe and well. Talk to you soon.